Okay. So it is, say, around 3 p.m. on a Friday. You're a librarian, and you've just spent your entire week preparing a CSV for import. It's a new collection. You have all your files together, been working through the control vocabularies. And so you go into Bulkrax and you create a new importer and you upload your CSV and all of your files and you click run and you wait a moment and you go into the queue and see what the status is and it seems that there's an error. So you look at it and it's a big stack trace, a rail stack trace, and it seems that there's like a no method error and something about a row factory and you don't know how to proceed. Excuse me. And so you want to go into the weekend with a little bit of a win here. So you go to Samvera Slack, but unfortunately, most people have left for the weekend. And and maybe somebody gets back to you and says, I'll take a look on a Monday. So it's these moments that this talk is about. Last year at Samvera Virtual Connect, we talked about why these moments are occurring. Some of the forces in that. And this year, we're going to talk about what 4 or 5 funding organizations, about a dozen metadata librarians, and one development team here at Notch 8 actually did about this and the process that we used. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nick Steinwachs. I'm at Notch 8. I'm joined by some members of Team Violet, one of our development teams here at Notch 8. And you'll be hearing from them throughout the presentation. But what we want to share here isn't exactly what we built. There's another talk for that. What we want to share is a process here that can help us build a delightful experience for users. And we think that it can yield the leading institutional repository or just general digital repository platform, not just an open source one. Um, it bears repeating that the note in the parentheses matters is that the reason a lot of people adopted Haiku is the same reason we're trying to sustain it. It should just be better on its merits, not just because it's there. It's present. Um, so apparently I went to the end. Those keys should not be next to each other. So 4 sections. First, we're going to talk about last year, a quick refresher, because it sets the context of everything else. Um, and then we're going to go through the timeline and the process of what we actually did last year or this year over the past year or so. Um, I'll also lend some terminology and some frameworks that can help us as a community kind of rally around this process and potentially improve it. And we'll talk about some of the challenges we faced as we went through that process and open it up for discussion. So this is going to be a pretty loose conversation. I'll be kind of leaning on the team here to fill in some of the blanks in their experience. It's about sharing the experience and the process, and I would invite other people to raise your hand if you'd like to kind of add some color commentary as well. So, so I'll let you read the slide while I close the door. Excuse me for one moment. All right, so last year we talked about a vision for success. We said focus on the users, focus on understanding the problems, question your assumptions, and build and iterate and measure how successful those outcomes are based on what you were trying to do, the problems you were trying to solve. So we acknowledge that we have an amazing platform, a great starting point. that just we need to continuously improve on. We have great talent here in our community. We have an incredible community in general, and we just need to focus on the value there, and making sure that the quality and the user delight is kind of central to what we're trying to accomplish as we continue developing this. So we're going to be kind of grounded in this diagram here. It's a little bit of a timeline. Um, so I tried to make the text as small as possible for everybody. So if you have some questions, just raise your hand and let me know. But throughout 2025, this period right here, we did a lot of listening. It wasn't just on a survey or a roadmap or anything like that. But we dipped into a lot of community meetings, talked to a lot of metadata librarians. I talked to other leaders in the community, and that people just that uses software every day. Um, so the first structured moment that we had was around, I think it was in August, I think August, September timeframe. We had a haiku interest group where we started to ask people to share their import problems, and we ran, I think, in a metadata interest group meeting, a more structured ideation session around what their problems were, focused on the import process. So they shared the intricate details of the CSV import process, and they described what they wish the tool told them along the way. And their answers lined up almost exactly with the anecdotal evidence we'd been hearing for months. And this point is when it stopped really being a hunch and it became something that we could all kind of rally around, and we thought was worth investing in. So by November, we had a couple of pretty clear problem statements here. And because the import process, getting works and collections into the platform is the primary means by which it creates value. So if you have friction there, you're just delaying value, right? So this is a really easy investment to get behind, okay? And so in December, we produced a design. It is not a final design. It was a design that was concrete enough for somebody to just look at and understand and decide if it was worth funding. And that distinction is really important. So we don't go into anything with like, this is what we're going to end up with. Okay. It's just for people to rally around it. So between January and March, we're focused on fundraising. We need to pay for this effort. So I think four institutions stepped up, and a lot of the people here are actually in those institutions. So I want to make sure that I kind of name them, if that's okay here. Palni and Palsy kind of led this through an IMLS grant. And it funded the first round of work for the header level validation. And the next round, I think Amigos committed about 9,000. UNC Chapel Hill committed 5,000. University of Buffalo committed, I think, 13,000. So guys, forgive me if I'm missing anybody. Is there anybody else that I haven't named here? I'd like to memorialize this a little bit, but this was really significant investment. Um, so if we count the IMLS funding and Notch8's in-kind contribution, the community has roughly invested around $77,000 into this specific user experience problem over the course of 14 months. So I don't have proof for this, but I think that part of whatever the relative level of success that we had raising funds in a relatively short amount of time toward the end there had something to do with the initial investment. So we've discussed as a group this first funder issue where people perceive a lot more risk, that nobody wants to be the first people to throw down because they don't know how far the rest of the community is going to take it. the sustainability of it. And so with this first kind of tranche of funding, um, we had some social proof and a amount, significant enough amount of investment where we could definitely accomplish stage one. And we also had well-defined subsequent stages that everybody could really see the value in. So I don't think every initiative will be quite like this. This was more optimal. So I think it's a contributing factor to the success here. So this is where the rubber really hit the road. So now we're funded and we're in active development. I think the first funded sprint began around February 23rd, the end of February, beginning of March. And then we did something that takes a lot more energy than this calendar makes it look. So every Wednesday, um, for 8 straight weeks, we kind of converted our standing community office hour into demonstrations. And I'm looking mostly at Larita because she's usually the one who did that. But there were certainly other people on the team who did that. Um, but the same metadata librarians we've been talking to since September showed up and looked at what the team had built over the course of the last week or half of a week. Um, and they told us that some things were still wrong. And this is what a dual track agile approach looks like in practice. It is harder than it sounds. You are developing something and you put code down and you ask for feedback, and sometimes it's not always positive. So I definitely wanted to ask for some feedback from Larita, Shane, the rest of the team here. How did that feel? Well, share some of your experience subjectively as you're going through that process.
My comment that I just put in the chat pretty much says it. You feel like you're driving the bus while you're trying to put the wheels on it. Um,
All right.
there's a conflict in trying to keep something in a demonstratable style, be able to show something twice a week and still trying to be productive in building things. And you had to keep juggling that back and forth. Is this going to break something? Will I have something I can show on Wednesday?
Mm.
That along with the sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Um, just the work of planning. What am I going to show? What, keeping track of what we did and trying to find a way to highlight that, and the effort it takes to present while you're trying to code as well. That takes time away from the coding, obviously. And so it sometimes it's frustrating as a developer. I don't, that's, the presentations aren't my primary thing. So that was
Yep.
a lot of effort.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. How about you, Shayna?
It turned out okay, but initially I was worried because sometimes when there's like, it just feels like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, I guess is a phrase. And so if you ask for all these opinions and people have different opinions and you're like, which one do I go for? And like, it can feel overwhelming.
Mhm.
Um, so it turned out okay, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure that the different opinions, the overhead of keeping things pretty functional, while it certainly kept you close to the users, um, presented a lot more challenges in terms of design decisions, architectural decisions. It just added a tremendous amount more complexity to the process. Would you agree? Yeah. So I'll keep going here. So while our team was delivering all this new functionality, um, that was continuously kind of validated and tested with and by the community, you all continued to fund it. So all that funding wasn't just upfront. It wasn't just like, all right, we have 5 people, let's start. We started not knowing if the rest of it would be funded. So I'll kind of I'm going to guess that part of the challenge that Larita, Shayna, Sarah, and Kirk faced was also keeping things in a place where if the funding did end, we would be left with a functional and valuable deliverable as well, even after stage one. So um, I'm thankful to say that there was more funding and they got to push it. Again, those keys are way too close together. I'm sorry about that. Um, yeah. Um, so the community did continue to fund it. So that's what happened in order. But I want to back up just a little bit for a moment and name what you all just watched. Because if the only thing you take from this talk is a case study, it's useful, but I don't think it's necessarily the most useful thing. The most useful thing is a process that we can all generalize, repeat, and improve upon. And for that, we just need a little bit of supporting vocabulary and a little bit of framing. Okay, so this is, thank you, Heather, University of Buffalo. IU, Oregon State. Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention you. I am so sorry. Yes, yes. My list was very incomplete. I put this together very late last night. I apologize. Um, okay, just some framing. When I talk about discovery, listening, research, we're talking about the left side of this double diamond design process. We diverge. What are all the problems we can discover, and we get a better understanding of them? We converge on a single problem that we can get behind. So this was like built by the UK Design Council like 20 years ago. It's basically what we did here in 2025. It's what every design process, whether you know it or not, follows every single time. Um, so when we say like, let's go back to the problem domain, or I'm not sure I understand the user problems well enough, I'm saying like, hey, it seems like we're trying to be here, but really we're here. Um, and then another thing, I mentioned dual track agile. Um, the parallel feedback loops that we had while we were in the development process is this thing called dual track agile. There's a lot of ways to do it. It's easier to say than it is to actually implement. It's tremendously difficult to do well. Um, it's much easier to sit down, lock yourself in a room, build something, and then just separately later get feedback and then iterate. Those iteration cycles are much longer. What we did is we built and iterated and got feedback in the middle of it. So Marty Kagan kind of championed this a long time ago, about a decade ago. But this is more what it feels like in practice, as I think the team can kind of attest to. These frameworks aren't our invention. Product teams have been using this for decades. But what we're trying to do here is bring them inside Samvera on Samvera's terms, not as like corporate jargon and methodology, um, and not necessarily as the right way to run a project. It's just a vocabulary and a way to work that fits with how our community works. Um, So there's a small version of this and a large version. The small version is we got this one experience better for a subset of users. Okay. The large version is that we've shown ourselves that pooled community investment um, with some discipline and real user problems and feedback, it produces results that are really visible and desirable. And this is something we can repeat. So a quick updated view of this dual double diamond approach. The UK Design Council kind of iterated on this idea over years, and you can kind of see some iterative loops here and blah blah blah, and that kind of reflects the reality of a more ideal process that is rapid feedback loops iteration. And then I want to draw your attention to this last little bit right here, outcome. how are we going to know if this worked? Because part of the initial investment was clearly articulating what success looked like. And so we had these metrics here. It's not about feature completion. It was about making things better. Um, so baseline today is that fewer than 3 in 10 new users import successfully on their first try because diagnosing what they're doing wrong was lengthy and difficult. Um, so we put some new metrics in place where we wanted to be. Um, but how are we going to measure that? So the last piece of this, and I think this is still out there in a PR, but it's more or less built. Larita, maybe you can fill in the blanks here, but we did implement some back end metrics and telemetry.
Yeah, it was at the point I left it off when we ran out of time, it was pretty much working, but there were some spec failures in the various because
Yeah.
Bulkrax has to work over like 4 different or so matrices of
Yeah.
rails and root and everything. So it was that the specs were not passing, and I think there was a little bit of question about is some of the metrics tracking quite the right thing.
Hmm.
But as a whole, there is a pull request on Bulkrax with some screenshots, so you can see where it was
Yeah.
left off at least.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
That's really exciting. Um, so what that allows us to do is to actually measure whether or not we were able to um, accomplish those goals or where we can improve next. So I want to do a little bit of a time check. Heather, was this for just 20 minutes?
That's right. It's just for 20 minutes.
Okay. I want to acknowledge something really quickly. One thing that we didn't do early enough was bring in some of the other members of our community that have really important roles. We brought Rob in way too late. Nick Don was very much a part of this, but Rob had some really valuable technical feedback early on, and then later on the product metrics. There's a lot of other challenges that we faced here that I don't have time to go into. I thought we would get through this a little bit quicker. But I would invite you all to post some questions in Bulkrax channel or in the chat here. And yeah, I wanted to thank you all for your time. I hope this was helpful as at least a little bit of a retrospective on a process that we hope to continue using.